Tandram is a human development center, and we provide an array of psychological services in the field of psychotherapy, counseling, career assessment, counseling, and human resource development. We also conduct a lot of webinars and workshops, internship programs for people and experts who are very passionate in the field of mental health today. I would love to invite Dr. Nimrit Singh, who is going to facilitate our session today. She is an international psychotherapist expertising in the field of couple and family, trauma, dynamic, and cognitive behavioral therapies. She has more than 13 years of experience in the field, and
25.
25 years.
You're getting me younger. You're making me feel even younger. Wow, thanks, Jayati. I love it.
She has more than 25 years of experience. She holds a PhD, master's degree, and has accomplished so many workshops and therapies. And it would be amazing for you to take over the session and enlighten everyone in the concept of grief.
Thank you, Jayati. Such a warm welcome, and welcome to all of you for being here. Thank you for being here. We're talking about grief today, and I think, we've never experienced such a pandemic. We've never experienced such a common grief ever in our lives as we have today, as we are now in these days. So many of us, as we are talking, we have already experienced it. We continue to experience very near and dear ones. At least I can say, just yesterday, a very, very close friend's mother passed away. It was not COVID, but it was because of cancer. But because of everything being closed, and there's no way we could reach them. But emotionally, as you know, that it's a very complex thing. Grief is very complex. It's very complicated, and different people respond differently. And as I'm saying it, the one of the persons in the family was very practical when I called her up. And I'm just going to ask you to just pay attention to what I'm saying. So this would also set the context for our session. So the daughter-in-law said, you know what? Yeah, it was long overdue. She was really struggling, and I'm so tired. I just want to go and sleep. She was with her in the hospital for almost 1 month. I spoke to the son in Canada, and I just told her that, you think I should speak to, Nikhil? He would be feeling very low right now. She said, of course you should speak to him. He would love to hear from you. So I called him up and I did offer my condolence. He really wanted to talk about his ma. He said that, today is Mother's Day, and on the 19th, mom and dad would have celebrated their wedding anniversary. He had lost his father on the 19th of May last year. So within 1 year, he's lost both his parents. Now, why do I say it's complicated? Different people respond differently to grief. And when we want to help people, we'll have to pace at their pace to understand how they want help. So today's session is totally dedicated and devoted to, even if you're a non-professional counselor, how many of you are non-professional counselors? Just put your thing in the chat saying, yes, I'm a non-professional counselor. So I know that, what kind of group we are talking to. Or you could just raise your hands that, yeah, I'm non-professional counselor. Yeah. And yet, yes, thank you. And yet we all have this need to help people. So I'm so glad people like you have turned up here so that we can help you to address this. And whenever you're talking to anybody in the future, thank you so much, Suma. You can really help them in a more appropriate way. You would know how much you could help, where you have to, draw your boundaries. How do you bring other professionals in the picture, and more and more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen, start my presentation. Towards the end, if there are any questions, you can even type the questions in the chat and Jayati will just look at them in between. We'll take a pause in between once. Make sure all of you have water with you. Because what we are going to do, we're going to go into a lot of stuff which could make you emotional, because you could be carrying some memories. So make sure you are hydrated and you're comfortable. All right. So we're talking about dealing with grief. And when we talk about dealing with grief, we, as I told you, that the pandemic has exposed us to so much of, grief, that I think this picture is on the 17th of January, where we are talking about 1,52,000 deaths, but it's just increasing. So it has also led to unexpected deaths, even in youngsters. Like we were talking about, it happens to people who have low immunity or who are older. But as we are seeing, no, it's not like that. There is no, set pattern to that. When bereavement is sudden, grief is amplified. Why is it sudden? Because we don't know, when a person goes to a hospital many times, person may not come back, or if he comes back, he may have come back with some morbidities. And that's why it leads to more psychiatric morbidities like PTSD, depression, obsessive behavior, phobias, anxiety. So it's not just the pandemic, that is the physical part of it, but the emotional and the mental part becomes very critical and crucial to deal with. So we are talking about what? Bereavement, that is that experience of losing a loved person. But sometimes, I don't know whether you've noticed that people are losing a number of people in the family. Like I experienced that one of my friends, she lost 3 people in the family. Okay, so this is like a multiple losses. People are not dealing with one, they're dealing with multiple. And then there is also mourning, which is a process of adaptation. Many times people don't mourn because they still are in the state of feeling detached and disconnected and dissociated from what is happening. Then even before that happens, sometimes people are anticipating. बोलते ना कि अगर कोई हॉस्पिटल गया वो वापस आएगा कि नहीं, will we see our grieved one, our loved one? So the struggles that make it very difficult is because there is a potential that you could lose people. So these are the different types of grief that people are experiencing and dealing with. And of course, with that, you notice what all people, you can see the people around you. There is fear, guilt, a shock, blame. There's a numbness, there's a detachment. Like clearly, this girl said that, I don't want to even talk about it. I'm so tired. There's somebody who wants to talk about it. There is sadness. There's also hurts, anger sometimes. Why my mother? Why me? Why did it happen to me? And there is loneliness as well, because actually people stayed away from each other for so long. They lost the person at a distance, and yet they were so emotionally close to the person. And sometimes it's also emancipation, that the person got the freedom, वो person छूट गया बीमारी से. So these are the common feelings of belief. Now there are stages, and this is really important. If you want to help somebody, you may have to take an assessment of where the person is. And trust me, it's different for different people. It may, person may go through all the 7 stages. Some may get stuck at a particular stage. Someone may get fixated to a particular stage. And some people may just overcome everything very comfortably. So these are the 7 stages. The first is always going to be a shock and a denial. Do you notice when you call somebody, in the first few hours of the loss, the person feels that cannot believe it. The person is numb. And you wonder, why is that person not responding to you? Because the person doesn't know. The body has shut down. There's a dissociation. From that normal window of tolerance, a person has gone into the lower part of the window where the person cannot connect to what is happening. The second stage is there is pain. The person suddenly experiences looking at loved ones, thinking about them. There is pain. There's also guilt that could have I not saved this person. So many times it's so unbearable, because you feel that I wish I had done something different. I wish I had taken the person to a better hospital. I wish I had responded faster. I wish I had not listened to that person. So there's pain and guilt. The third stage is going into, I was talking about the tolerance window. You go above that, means there is anger, hurt, pain, and bargaining. It's almost like blaming the Almighty. Is God not there? Is He so inhuman? Is He not? How much did I prayed? How much, I wanted this person to live. Why such a young death? So all this is the This is the phase of anger and bargaining. The fourth is when the person just gets, withdraws, just disconnects to things and gets into a state of exhaustion, where the person feels that koi fayda nahi hai kuch karne ka. That is the stage of depression. Many times people stay more in this state for a long time. They don't want to connect, they don't want to talk, and giving them help at this time may not really help. Then the fifth stage is the upward turn. Now the person has stayed there, has realized that, there's nothing that can be done. Then the anger and pain somewhere die out, because now the person starts thinking of what next, what can I do now? So there is a calming effect that comes along. And also the person starts receiving support from other people and feels good about that. Then the sixth stage is the reconstruction, because this is a breakdown. Now the person is going to reconstruct, what do I do in my waking hours now? Now this is done. Putting the pieces of life together. Sometimes people are giving away their things, clearing up the clutter, and trying to see how they can, normalize things for themselves and the family. It's like, they start cooking their food, or they start watching TV, they want to move away from, the loss which they have experienced. And lastly is acceptance and hope. Uh, Gradually, after 6 months, 1 year, the person just starts feeling that, whatever happened, happened, and now I have to look at what next. So these could be the different phases. And as I told you, it's not necessary that everybody has to go through everything equally. Sometimes a shock and denial for some people, if it's very close death and it was very sudden, it was not expected, then the shock and the denial can be even for a longer time. Now, how do we assess and intervene? I think this is the important part. Let's look at let's do something reflective. Now, I'm going to read a vignette to you, which is put down here. And I want you to start thinking of these 2, 3 questions which are put up here. And in your chat box, when I ask you the question, you can just put down what your response could be. So the client says, even though I got out of COVID-19, I feel so bad. I don't know why. I keep thinking that I was always so healthy. I never had an illness. I now start feeling breathless at times. I have aches and pains, and I'm not as energetic as I used to be. I just feel like my perfect health has been ruined, and I will never get it back. What do you think from the start to the end, as I read it? What kind of emotions do you feel that the person could have? If you are this person, what are the emotions that this person could be feeling? So what is a primary emotion that comes through to you from this client's narrative? You can just put it down in the chat box. And remember, there's no wrong answer. So even though I've got out of COVID, I feel so bad. I don't know why. I keep thinking that I've always been so healthy. I never had any illness, and now I feel breathless at times. I have aches and pains, and I'm not, as energetic as I used to be. I just feel like my perfect health has been ruined. I will never get it back. What feelings? Yeah. Sad, helpless, anger, depression, confusion, anxiety, yeah, frustration, helplessness, yeah, absolutely, yeah, hatash, yeah, absolutely, perfect. So that's exactly, there is a feeling of sadness. How would you want to acknowledge this emotion? How does one acknowledge how the other person is feeling? So there are ways in which you can say that, right? So I can really understand that it could be making you feel so helpless. I get how you feel at this moment as you talk. I can sense that, this is really making you feel so helpless and you're very uncomfortable with this feeling. So it's what do you, whatever you pick up, you're just sensing it and saying it to the person. More in a conversation, in an open way. The person may say yes, may say no. Sometimes the person may just deny that's not true. Yeah, I can understand. That's okay. Whatever your feelings are, but there are some feelings, and it's fine to feel the way you feel. Then would you want to explore this emotion further with the client? Like if you do, now this is what the person is saying, and I think the person could be ready to talk. What questions would you ask, or what kind of statements would you make that would facilitate the process? So what do you think we can, say to this person? That I feel sorry to hear that. I can really understand what you're going through. It seems like a place of helplessness. I can see that, you feel anxious about your health and you seem worried about, whether you would get back your health. So, just in a the tone becomes very important, and it's like you're just, pacing with the person. So it's possible you can start by this reflective exercise in pairs so that you kind of get ready to help others as well. Yeah. Now, preparing to intervene, how do we do it? Being aware of the natural process of grief. As I told you, we need to understand the cycle. We need to understand that, how people could respond differently. As I told you, two people give very different response to the same thing. Being aware of our own emotions in the context of grief, very important, very important. So it's important to check in before you check in with others, how this feeling is.
पर
When
मुझे
you,
आपकी आवाज आ रही है.
yeah. So being aware of your own emotions becomes really important, because imagine if you are going through, what the client is talking about, that good health, and suddenly your health has failed. What kind of emotion would you feel? That's exactly through empathy and through your warmth, you can feel it within yourself. So that is a preparation and starting point to intervene. And having a database of resources. Can anybody tell me what are databases of resources? Can you just type them in? As a mental health practitioner, or as somebody who is helping others, what kind of things, the person could require at this time? Medicines, food, safety, financial health. It could be so many things at that moment. The person may just be unprepared. Maybe he just needs to connect to his relatives. He needs to, find resources to reach out to other people. So there can be so many things. Actually, the loss can also be taking the person to the crematorium, finding assistances. So whatever, when you're helping people, this database of resources also could be very handy. Then identifying the concerns. See, when you talk to the client, you would have a feeling of how the person feels by asking him the right questions. So some of the things that could happen and the client may talk about could be physical sensation. The person may feel that मुझे अपने chest पे बहुत tightness लगती है या खोखलापन लगता है. My stomach feels very empty. Or the person may feel that I don't feel my body at all. I feel that I don't have a sensation in my body. And there is a disbelief that I don't think this person could have died. I'm not sure whether this is the truth. So there is a shock state. So the disbelief comes up. That really is the person dead. I cannot believe it. So we know that that is also a stage of grief. Then depersonalization, as I told you, the person may not experience, may not embody anything, may not feel anything in the body. It can also cause confusion and absent-mindedness. So at one moment, the person is, talking in terms of, ये तो होना था, ये तो कितने लोगों के साथ हुआ. the दूसरी तरफ the person can say ऐसा हुआ ही क्यों, होना नहीं चाहिए था. So there's too much of, you know, this of upheaval of emotions, high and low. And the person may also not be able to attend to everything. You may have talked to the person could have forgotten. Starts off a conversation and does not end. So it's quite possible that, you know, the person could be going through some kind of a depersonalization. Then sense of presence, that means feeling that that person is still there with me. He was sitting here, he was talking to me, he just went off to the hospital, and one day we get the news he's no more. I can feel him in the kitchen, I can see him sitting and watching TV with me. He's there. So in a way, the person feels that, you know, the person is there, present with the person. And sometimes acute mental state can also cause some kind of hallucinations where the person may see visuals or hear voices of the other person. Sometimes social withdrawal, there's a phase when the person just doesn't want to connect to anybody. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. The person may not want to take a call. And I think here we will talk as we go along that I think the boundaries are very important, that we have to respect their boundaries. Only when the person wants to talk, we should be available to talk to that person. It's his prerogative or her prerogative to talk or not to talk. Sleep and eating, of course, gets disturbed. The person may have nightmares, may not be able to sleep at all, even with medication. Eating, you know, sometimes the person may not eat at all, or the person may eat out of anxiety. Dreams of the deceased person, that person came into my dream and said this to me. So these are all real things that happen. Avoiding reminders of the deceased person. So it also happens that the person says, I don't want to see the photograph. I don't want to think about anything related to that person for some time. And there are people who grieve like that because they feel that, you know, that person becomes alive when they see that person, and that the person is not able to deal with. And seeking reminders of the deceased person, like, you know, some people go to the other extent, they say idhar baithe the, unki ye favorite jagah thi, wo idhar baith ke khate the. So going and, you know, getting holding on to objects or things which could be related to people. Very honestly, this is all normal. There's nothing pathological about it, unless it goes to a point that, you know, the person is not able to cope with it. If these are passing phases and the person talks about it, then sometimes just normalizing it is, I can understand, yes, that happens at times. I can understand as you're saying this. So this is how, you know, they would express themselves in some way or the other. Now, as a role, there are steps in how you can start with tele counseling. See, it is the beginning is you have to be prepared how to do it. Then is the starting point. I think the most important is the starting. How do you connect to the person? Are you able to pick up the micro communication the person is making? Are you with the person? Are you sensitive and compassionate to the person so that the person starts feeling comfortable talking? Sometimes people come for counseling but may not feel comfortable, comforted to talk. That's also fine. Then is the middle phase where, you know, you listen to the person for whatever the person is saying. The termination is also a very important part. Many times it can be just one session. So you have to prepare for a, you know, grief tele-counseling can be just one session with one follow-up, so that I was a little concerned. I just wanted to know how you're doing. If there's anything else you want to talk about, I'd be happy to help. So in a way, towards the end, it has to be a conclusion. So if the person doesn't come back to you, he still is okay with however you've helped him. So the first is we acknowledge the pain of the loss and express our condolence for the loss. It's human to human. We never use tools and techniques in any session, remember. It's always one human being connecting to another human being. So what does one normally say when somebody says, you know, I just lost my mother a couple of days back and I am like a fish out of water. I just don't feel good about anything. So of course, these could be some ways in which, you know, you could break the silence from your end. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss. It may have been very painful for you. I feel at a loss of words to express how sorry I feel. Now, this depends upon how intense the person sharing is. It must be so painful for you to feel like you could not do anything to help that person. When someone passes away so suddenly, it can be quite difficult to accept it as real. You spent a lifetime together. I cannot imagine that, what it would be not to have that person in your life. Like many times, people who have lived for 40 years, 50 years together, and the husband kept saying, about his wife that, oh, chali gayi, she's gone. I cannot believe it. She should have not done it. She never told me she's going. It's not fair. So, yeah, you spent a lifetime with that person, and you cannot imagine that that person is no more with you. So it's basically just, reflecting back the feeling the person is experiencing. And then, of course, silence is golden in many cases. Just staying quiet, waiting for the person to reflect, come back. So just acknowledging the pain is a great way to start. Be aware of your own feelings. So in counseling, there's always two people are, in a way pacing with the similar feelings. The only thing is you don't allow your feelings to overwhelm you. So I would suggest that if you've had a very recent loss or you are very overwhelmed, do not try to help other people. Take a break for some time till you get ready to help others. Third, ask permission to continue the call. Sometimes a person may just, break down or may not want to talk. So when you sense there's a long pause, a person is not showing up, there is no body language or eye contact, or the person is just melting into his own silence or her silence. Maybe you can, say something like that. I can imagine it's not easy to talk about this, and it's totally up to you whether you'd like to speak to me or not. If you want to speak, I'm here. If you do not want to speak, that's totally fine. So giving that option and choice so that he or she feels comfortable whether to continue or not to continue. And many times I've heard people say, you know what, thank you for helping out, reaching out, but I'm not feeling like it. And sometimes the family members organize the call. I remember there was this lady who died of suicide, and it was a very shocking experience for the husband because they had gone to clean up the mother's house, her mother's house, and she locked herself in the room. She did not come out for a long time. He thought she was clearing. He called for the food, and suddenly, when he knocked, he heard no sounds. He realized there's something happening inside. He broke open the door to find she's no more. Now, the because it was such a shock, and they had an excellent relationship, it's just that she had depression, and he did not understand the gravity of her problem. So, the brother, man's brother, sent him for therapy. He was just not. He just kept on talking about, and she died. I don't know what happened. Why did this happen? I can't believe it. How will I live my life without her? So for the next 2, 3 sessions, all I was listening was to this, and it was perfectly fine because see, understand, it's a pace of the client, whatever the client wants to do. So he kept sighing, he kept crying, he kept feeling helpless. He just didn't know what to say. And we kept, it happened for a few sessions till he actually opened up. And then counseling took a different level of, then we did different kind of work. So permission that it's okay, it's fine, you may not want to talk. And that's a good thing to say in the beginning only, that if you don't feel like, it's fine. And many times clients feel that they have to give every information about what happened, but that's a no. We don't need them to go through the trauma or to relive the trauma. They're already going through such difficult times. So we have to make sure that it's okay. It's fine. Let's look at what is happening to you. Let's see how I can help you with that. How, we can help you at this moment. I really understand what you're going through. And it's just not easy. And you've taken the courage to come for a session. That's amazing that you really want to help yourself. And I'm here with you. So that's how, you may want to normalize it, that if the person doesn't want to talk, that's fine. Follow the client's lead on what the person wants to discuss. Now, it's possible when the client comes, there may be so many things the client wants to talk about. And it is not possible in that we normally a session could be anywhere between 35 minutes to 50 minutes. It's not possible that we could do everything. So at some point when there's a little pause, you could say, yes, I know it's so overwhelming and you have so many thoughts in your mind. And I wonder, what is that one thing that, takes precedence? What, that you really want to deal with, you really want to work with in the session. So, and then again, silence. So let the person decide, yeah, it's more about this loss. I can deal with the other things, but I can't deal with that hurt that I feel that wo person chhod ke chala gaya. So yeah, let's talk about that. So we don't never want details, because details can re-traumatize the patient, the client. And since it's so raw, the wound is so raw, you cannot open up the wound again. Fifth is acknowledge and validate feelings of anger and helplessness. So how do we do this? It's completely understandable that you feel so frustrated and angry at the situation. It's very frustrating to be helpless and to feel that you are unable to help. So just phrasing it, reflecting based on what the person is saying, just saying that in short can be of great help. So the person feels that you're pacing, you're understanding then the person may not even feel the need to explain to you. But the idea is going into feelings. So it encourages the person to get into the feeling. Then sixth is normalize their feelings of grief. Now, as I told you, so it's very important to understand the stages. So it's common to feel numb after experiences like this, what you have been through. It sounds so painful. Anybody could feel this way. It is perfectly normal to feel this, what you're feeling at this moment. Okay, so normalizing it. Then discussing practical needs. So, and I wonder, how is it with your children? Who's really taking care of them? And who really takes care of your uh, needs of food? Are you looked after? Is that so? What is the practical needs also the person? Is there anything else that seems to bother you which needs to be dealt with at this moment? So encouraging the person, it could be anything from financial to emotional to feeling lonely, whatever. So, encouraging the person to talk about, is there anything else that, is important for you to deal with this at this moment? Then listen to the client's reminiscence of the deceased. Many times, especially when, अपने relatives बात करते हैं, हम रोक देते हैं. Supposing, the husband loses a wife and the children will say, Papa, बार-बार मत याद करो, मत बोलो. Now that is again something that's not allowing the person to heal. So when they come to you in therapy, many times people just want to talk about, the person. I remember there was this girl who was telling me that when she lost her mother, the father constantly throughout the day, what he would do is she would say, वो पूरा टाइम मम्मी की फोटोग्राफ देख के बस रोते रहते हैं. That's how he likes it. The whole day he wallows in pity. There's nothing she could do about it, because that's how he's expressing his pain, his loss. So when people talk about the deceased person in whichever way, I think listening, active listening would really be important. Respecting religion and spiritual concerns. Sometimes people say that, हमने उनकी आखिरी इच्छा नहीं पूरी की, या हमें ये करना जरूरी है. So while there is a pandemic and the reality is that we cannot travel, how, there could be options through which this could be done, maybe at another stage, like, you know, Ganga mein jaake unka jal parwa karna, unki astiyan bahani, whatever. Some people are very superstitious, or, you know, the deceased person has told them that I want to go back here, I want, you know, take me to this place. So even respecting, yeah, I can understand. I fully understand what you're saying, and yet I understand that your children don't want you to be unsafe at this moment. So yes, while you may hold on to your belief and that is really sacred to you, maybe it could be, you know, you can work it out in a way that, you know, you could do it at some point. So whatever it is, no, it's like supporting right now. You're not finding any therapy. You're not diagnosing. You're just being with the person. So it's actually, grief therapy is also called supportive therapy, because what you're doing is you're helping the client dwell in feelings and be, you know, normalize it, come out with that so that he starts feeling comfortable once the feelings are released. And lastly, conduct a brief risk assessment. Now, it is quite likely, quite possible that the person may have suicidal thoughts, may have masochistic thoughts, may want to harm himself or herself. I think, and if the person has a very high lack of impulse control, is very, you know, impulsive by nature, takes to drinking, has been doing that in the past. I think these are some things which need to be brought to the notice of the family so that, you know, they can take care, and some kind of assessment would, you know, you would have it as you talk to the person. I remember I had this client who had written a suicide note, and she had shared it with her boyfriend. And she said that, you know, when she came for therapy, she said, I was almost at the end of life. I wanted to commit suicide. And she kept looking at me in a way that, you know, what would I respond? I said, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. And I'm so happy that you know, you brought it up in this session. And yeah, would you like to look at it a little more so that you don't need to feel that helplessness? And so she said, yeah, actually it's to do with my work. I feel very stressed. So we started talking about what is really stressing. So sometimes just, and trust me, you may not be in this position to do this, but this would be a red flag if you could ask them, you know, that what feelings come up, how they feel, have they ever thought about it, and do you know, do they need help? And there are other people who can help them. While you may not be trained to do that, but you could always pay attention, show up, listen to them, so that you have an idea and the family can always be briefed on the same. Now, what are the things which we need to avoid? What do you think those would be? And these are really important to note, making the client see the positive side. You know, when हम बोलते हैं ना कि हम अच्छा सोचो, अच्छा होगा, this is just a very wrong thing to do at such a time. It's probably best to leave the person in the state the person is, because the more the person is able to deal with feelings, the stronger the person will come out. Okay, so when you say na, at least that person did not suffer. हम लोग Indians ना, हम बहुत fatalistic होते हैं, बहुत religious slant देते हैं चीजों को. अच्छा हो गया ना, that वो चला गया, उसको तकलीफ नहीं हुई इतनी. It's good that no one else died. I think that sometimes can be very demeaning to the person. That means, you know what you're saying, I'm rejecting your feelings and emotions at this moment. And that's not therapy then. That's not counseling. Explicitly or implicitly pressurizing the client to get over it. Come on, be a strong person. Would he like it if he saw you in such a bad state? You think it would be something he would appreciate. So we do not go away with the person who dies. You need to be stronger. Your family needs you at this moment. I think those are kind of things which are, again, taking away the person's right to experience feelings. The very fact that the person is in counseling, I think that, you know, even stopping the person from crying and discharging emotions is a no-no. Then explicitly and implicitly pressurizing the client to grieve also. Sometimes the person has come in a state of denial. The person is in a state of, you know, detachment. I gave you that example. It's perfectly fine. You still can stay with the person, hold the space there. If the person feels comfortable to break down, to talk about it, it's fine. We are not in this thing of, making the person cry. Then it just that, that, yeah, I can understand sometimes, you just feel so overwhelmed that you're not able to experience your feelings. And yet there can be so much happening inside. And it's perfectly fine. You can feel the way you feel and express it the way you want to express it, just as you want to do it. So, legitimizing that too. Then referring to fate or destiny, as I told you, that jo bhi hota hai, achhe ke liye hota hai, the higher plan. See, in these things, giving a spiritual slant that wo theek hona hi nahi tha, unki tabiyat hi kharab thi, doctor ne to na kar diya tha. I think these are very rational ways of looking at things, but that is a defense mechanism. Because we are not able to deal with the reality, we don't want the other person to deal with that. So family members do that because they don't want to face it. They don't want other people to talk about it as well. And the difference between us and the family members is that we are able to humanize feelings, and it's okay to feel the feelings. Then casually self-disclosing a similar big loss. Sometimes that, we are also overwhelmed. If I have experienced trauma or a loss, it's very difficult for me to not bring that into the session. So I have to hold myself. It won't be a fair thing because you are holding that space for the other person. It's not to talk about your losses. Okay. And it's not about comparing that I could deal with it and you can't. So that is again demeaning somebody else. Okay. So make sure that you don't really bring that in as much as possible. But yeah, you can say that other people feel like this. Some people can feel like this. And each one has, everybody has a right to feel the way they do as you do. Then giving generic reassurances, you will feel better. Time is a healer. Everything happens for the, for the best. You don't have to worry anymore. At least that person is at rest. He is not suffering anymore. आपने देखे, how many of us do this? Just give me a thumbs up. Ke, yeah, this is a very normal thing which we, do. Do we do this? We have been doing this, right? We make this, we make it so casual. We make it so, we take away all the pain. We think that koi jadoo ki chhadi se hum will take away the pain if we talk like this. But I think just being with the person at this time is just what the person needs. So he's not feeling pushed to do things according to you. And there is no right or wrong. It is pretty complex in itself, by itself. So all we can do is just be there, stay with the person as long as the person wants to stay in the session. And towards the end, always good to help the person that what is it that really calms you down usually? What have you been doing so far? How has it been working for you? What else do you think, you would like? So because it's maybe the first and the last session. I'm so glad that, you reached out for help. And I'm sure whenever you need it, you can always come back. And is there a way I can reach out to you so that, I know you're okay, you're comfortable? So closing the session also, with this, that we did this and, I understand that you're going through this at this moment and it's perfectly normal, natural to feel the way you feel at this moment and give yourself the, the freedom to feel this way. And even if the person is moved away from work, is not doing anything at home, that's fine. So normalizing how the person is feeling. So this is in short, I had this much to share. And now if there are any questions, I'd love to take the questions.
Ma'am, there were a couple of them, I noted them down.
Sure.
One of the questions was that how do one conduct risk assessment of self-harm?
Yeah, okay. So very quickly, what you could find out is that what is a typical day like? Is the person able to sleep? Is the person on any medication? Is there any comorbidity? And how is the person dealing with it currently? Are there any thoughts that are disturbing? What kind of thoughts? Can you give me an example? So you can find out, that whether the person is at danger, is not able to deal with these things or no. Yeah, Divya, I can suggest you books. I will send it to you by mail. Yeah. So that's what you could do, if that answers the question. And also at what stage, what is important is if you feel that, this is not the person cannot benefit just by talking, because the turbulence is far more and it could be pathological for the person, then I think helping the person have a data bank of who all the person could be referred to. Be open to helping, but if you can't completely, then you may want to ask that person that would you want help? Would you want to meet somebody as a professional who could help you more? Could do that. Welcome, Divya. Yeah, Jayati?
Someone wanted to know a little more about on the step of normalizing the feelings.
Okay, okay. So, when I gave you that example that, when somebody comes out of COVID, many of us have experienced it. And we were miserable. We were, not feeling good about anything. We didn't want to do anything. So when somebody spoke to you and said, "How are you feeling?" You could say, "Miserable. I don't feel good at all. Nothing seems right, and everything is going wrong. Why our family? We took so much care." So just saying that, yeah, this is how this is perfectly. This is how you could feel, and it's perfectly fine to feel the way you're feeling. So normalizing is accepting all those things, or one or two things the person is saying to you, which is really, the person feels, how can I feel like that? Like this person said, no, I've always been a very healthy person. And there could be times when you could feel like this. And this is a state where you're feeling very powerless and helpless. Okay, so this is normalizing it, that you never felt like this, but you could also feel like this.
There was another question in Gujarati. I don't know if I've translated perfectly or not, but when is the right time when you feel that the person can get out of the grieving or the shock that they have received?
Okay, so this is again complex because it depends on a lot of things, like who are the family members close to the person? Is the person close to somebody? Is there a bonding? Is the person, feeling mobilized? Does the person have a job to go back to? Does he have, what brings him back to, the regular life? Sometimes, mothers, if they have little children, they just want to normalize things quickly so they can come back. So it depends on, the personality, on what are the expectations, demands, roles, a lot of things, and his own propensity to come out of, of whatever the person is going through. So yeah, and coming for therapy itself is a very positive thing. So that is one thing that needs to be acknowledged. That's great, that you are here, and I really admire that you took this time out, and I really am touched that you called out and reached out to me to seek help. So encouraging it, that's the supportive part, with compassion, with care and love. It may take time, we don't know. In grief therapy, slow is fast. The slower you go, the more you will reach. You'll be able to help the person.
Can there be group grief counseling?
Yes, there are groups like this, support groups, which, ideally that would be a great thing because they have gone through some common experiences and the way they've dealt with them have been different. So yeah, in many countries, not so much here. I have not seen so many group happening like this, but yeah, it's a great idea because बांटने से कम होता है. They know that different people try different things and it works for them. And when they talk to somebody who's gone through similar experiences, it's easier for them to relate. The empathy is much higher.
There is another question of how can one motivate the other person to come for therapy regularly?
Once you can only motivate the person for once, so you can always say that it helps many people, so it would help you. It's all about just talking to a person who's trained in this field and taking a session. If you feel just taking a session is okay with you, I can set it up for you. And then after that, you can decide whether you want to continue. So I think it's more to introduce. And even if you don't want to talk to anybody, I'm always going to be there for you. I'm there, you can always talk to me. So it's better to help them, not help them at all. Yeah, Nikita, you want to ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. I had a question. I was not able to, express it on the chat properly.
Sure.
So I have felt that people around me who have recently gone through a loss of a family member, I was not, completely able to provide them with the required support, because I had this feeling that as a psychologist, how we, support people in the time of grief is different from how people around us would support people, other people who have gone through grief. So my question is that how, can we maintain that boundary to not get into the mode role of a psychologist and then support people outside of our counseling sessions?
Brilliant question, Nikita. So, you're talking about boundaries. So, when you're working with people who are your near and dear ones, there's no counseling that can happen. They can only be listening and being with them, taking care of them, not more than that. But yeah, you can encourage them to take help from an outside agency, so that they feel comfortable talking about it, because sometimes the issues are within the family and they don't want to talk to somebody from the family. So keeping that boundary, that I fully respect and appreciate that you may not want to say things to me, but if there's anything I can help you with, I'd really be happy to do that. But beyond that, because the issues of confidentiality come in, and sometimes there's a very thin dividing line, what you can say, what you may not say. It may just happen that you may blurt it out. So I think it's better that that distance is maintained. So I hope I've answered it. You can't. The boundaries have to be maintained in that case.
Yes, ma'am. Sure. Thank you.
And it's very important for people to also understand that this is brief intervention. It's not long term. It's not a psychotherapy. It is not a diagnosis. Okay, so it's not very long. These are just short term supportive ways in which you do it through active listening, through compassion and empathy. You're able to understand and normalize that this can happen to anybody, and it's okay to feel like this, and allow the person to experience feelings, so that they can feel a comfort of doing that with you. That's all it's about. Any
There
other
was
questions?
one last question which was asked. Are there
Yes.
any scales to measure the severity of grief?
Yes, there are. uh, there are checklists, and also you could prepare one on your own. There are ways of doing that, so that we can have a bit of the physical health, mental health, um, uh, what are the difficulties, current difficulties, comorbidities. So a lot of things put together can give us an idea of how severe the grief is. But it's not in a session. It has to be done in a proper manner, and it has to be done by a proper psychologist, by a professional. Yes, Ami, you have a question?
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Ami. Tell me.
Okay. So, ma'am, I recently encountered a few, like they were not my patients, but that's what I saw in many of the family right now. That when they lost their family members due to COVID recently, they used to keep on remembering their like by seeing all their belongings, the deceased person ka belongings, they used to remember them every now and then. Okay, so what other family members used to always tell the client was, ये सारी चीजों को हम हटा देते हैं, we should remove all this thing. Distraction is fine, okay, it's fine, but कितने हद तक तुम सारी चीजें निकालने वाले हो? You are not going to, like, if your husband is no more right now, you're not going to remove the whole cupboard and keep it outside, right? then you have to make the client learn how to deal with the situation, right? वो grief cycle में acceptance आने में it will take time, but removing the belongings and just throwing away the belongings will not be that healing, right? So I was just wondering how to cope up with this thinking. Subah uthe, they feel that this is the waking time of that diseased person. We used to wake up together. We used to have our tea together. एक एक चीज देख के they used to they remember their partner, all right? So how to cope with that? Like how to
Right.
help them with that?
See, on the onset, I'd like to say that many times that's why this session is very important, because family members almost feel that, you know, if you take something out of sight, it is out of mind. It doesn't work like that.
Correct.
It's very deep seated until the person doesn't reach the depth of the own loss. And it's a slow process. It has to happen over a period of time. So I've seen, you know, when people take away things, it's like, you know, they actually, it's a defense of avoidance. We don't want to face the thing.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, if, you know, the person listens to wo ghazal सुन के बहुत खुश होता था, and then they cry over it. It's very healthy. It's very humanizing. I think somewhere grief is as if it is, you know, stigmatized. You can't grieve over something. It's a very normal, healthy emotion. I'm sure after attending this session, you will agree that it's fine if people feel like that. So in fact, encouraging family members to say that it's okay. When the person is ready, the person will give that up. Will say that ye hata do, ye let it go. It's a phase. It happens in phases.
Okay. So, ma'am, are there any? Can we like it? It's just a thought, but you can correct me. Are there any affirmations that we can help them with? Like, I recently read an article where it was written ki for especially grief, the clients who are undergoing grief, giving them affirmations for all that things that they keep on remembering about the deceased person can help them. So, like, have you ever tried
It's
doing
like,
this?
yeah, it's like saying, you know, that if I don't want to think about COVID, I'll start praying and doing a lot of bhakti, or I may go and meditate somewhere. Will I not take all my memories with me? So that's one way, you know, the various ways in which we can heal people. But healing is with feelings as well. You cannot take away the feelings from the person and start healing the person. If that person says that I like these affirmations, this makes me calmer, this makes me feel comfortable, that's great. But let it happen when it happens. It's a slow process. If that person is ready to do it, and, you know, you want to send alternate healing like Reiki and all, there are people here who do it. That's very good, you know, to calm the person down. But it has to be done keeping boundaries in mind, respecting people for whatever they are. Again, slow is fast here.
Yeah. All right. Got my doubt cleared, ma'am. Thank you so much. It was really good.
My pleasure. So over to you, Jayati, if there are no questions.
Is there time for one more question?
Yeah, sure.
So one of the person wanted to ask that what is the approximate time frame beyond which it is not bereavement but actually depression?
Okay. See, it can take anywhere between, again, the intensity, the closeness of the person. It can take 6 months, 1 year. Beyond that is something then one has to look at that, you know, it's not getting better, it's not healing. Then it could have, you know, one may need to look at it from the thing of mental health. But yeah, 6 months it could take even a year. But yeah, you'll see that slowly the person is making some shifts, things are getting better. Pehle wo kha nahi raha tha, so nahi raha tha. With the medication, the person is getting calmer, or the person is slowly getting back to work. So you will see that it's not, it's a slow shift. And if the shift is happening, that's fine. You can just encourage to continue, the person to continue doing that. I hope that answers the question. Divya, I think it was your question. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I think that was the last question.
Great. Over to you, Jayati.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank each and everyone who was a participant today. And I'm hoping that all the practitioners and the counselors have taken back a lot of lessons that they can actually pursue during their counseling sessions and therapy sessions. Feel free to reach out to us. Excuse me. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any ideas about webinars that we can conduct, and we would love to do so. Since the pandemic times are going on, as Stangram, we've moved forward and we've thought of taking up a lot of philanthropic work, and we would love to continue doing that. We're also coming up with various programs and internship programs, which is a 1-month course, which can be taken up by professionals who just want to brush up their skills. And we have a lot of career assessments going on, and we would love to reach out to everyone who's interested in that. So you can email us, you can call us, you can refer to our website, and we will be available to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I love being here, and we very encouraged. We would love to do more such sessions for you. Just write to us, and we're going to be sending you some information. We're going to send you a poster on grief therapy. Look out for that. All right. Thank you so much. God bless. Stay safe. Stay comfortable wherever you are. Bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
Welcome.